All right, good morning, everyone. Very exciting to see all of you here for the Power BI Designer session. My name is Casper de Jonge, and I'm a Senior Program Manager on the Power BI team. And my goal is today to give you an overview of the Power BI Designer, and we'll go into some features more in depth, more technical details, but it's kind of a cross between the level 200 and the level 300 session. So some pieces might go in a little bit deep. But I hope by the end of the session, for those of you who already installed the Power BI Designer and downloaded it. Okay, so by the end of the session, I hope you all will go and download the Power BI Designer and install it. Because there's one magic word about everything that I'm going to show you today. Everything is free. So you don't have to pay anything. Just download the Power BI Designer. Yeah, exactly. So download the Power BI Designer, play with it. You can even upload it to the Power BI service. It's also free. There's a free SKU there. Just type in your email address and go to the Power BI service. The Power BI Designer on its own doesn't need anything. You just go to Microsoft BI Download Center, download it. You don't need to type an email address or a password or anything. Just download it and install it. So what are we going to look at today? So we're going to look at, in short, what is the Power BI Designer. We're going to take a quick look at getting started with the Power BI Designer. What are some of the functionalities? What are some of the capabilities? Then we're going to dive in a bit. We're going to take a look at a lot of new DAX functions that have been introduced to the Power BI Designer. And also, we're going to look at the introduction of a new relationship type. So we've introduced a bidirectional cross-filtering. That's what it's called. And it's mostly known by many of you as many-to-many relationships. So we've introduced that into Power BI Designer as well. Yeah, that's pretty big. And then in the last piece, I'm going to publish the Power BI Designer workbook to the Power BI service, create a dashboard of it. It's just a few minutes because most of you have probably already seen dashboards a lot. Okay, so we're going to look at what is the Power BI Designer. And before we go in, I'm just going to set a little bit of context. So the Power BI Designer is a freely downloadable 32 or 64 bits desktop application that is optimized to work with the Power BI service. It doesn't need to. You can just install a Power BI Designer on your machine, have it installed by someone else on this machine, and just email it around. That's fine by us as well. What it does, it combines the capabilities of Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View into a single experience, optimized for doing interactive visualization and analysis. The main output of these are interactive reports. So you can create your reports that you already know and love with Power View, but create them immediately on the fly inside of the Power BI Designer. And then the idea is, of course, that we can effortlessly publish this to the Power BI server so you can share it with others who don't have the Power BI Designer installed or not as technically skilled. You just point it to the Power BI service. You have your dashboard there. You can send it to your CIO, send it to your team, and it should be pretty straightforward. And I think also the big thing is it's updated on a monthly basis. What I'm going to show you today is a build that I took from yesterday, so it's going to be a little bit scary for me, but I'm going to show you a build from yesterday, and you'll see a bunch of the features that we're shipping at the end of this month, in the next couple of weeks, already showing up in the build that I'm using today. So we're shipping, every month we're shipping a bunch of new features, just like you're used from the Power Query team is doing today, and me from the Power Pivot team have been very jealous on that for a long time. So I'm really happy that I can do this now as well with the Power BI Designer. Some questions that come up often, regularly is, okay, you already have Power BI and all the great features inside of Excel. What's up? Why do you have two? Well, there's a few reasons for it. One, the features in Excel aren't going anywhere. They're still continuing on. But the big difference is we found out that a lot of our customers either couldn't have the latest version of Excel. One, they couldn't get it installed, and they could get our competitors installed. So we said, okay, we need to do something about that. And the second thing is to make it a really great interactive visualization and analysis tool, which is where we want to go. We want to integrate everything. And the problem, of course, with Excel is, and it's a nice problem to have, it has 1 billion users. So, and they do all kinds of things. They do their soccer team's statistics and the planning of that. And there's all kinds of things that normal people do with Excel that are not waiting on oh, how do I write DAX? Or how do I do these things? So we couldn't integrate all of that stuff into Excel because we couldn't change Excel as much as we wanted to, which makes a lot of sense. So the way going forward is all our products will still be inside of Excel, but it will be nicely better integrated into the Excel audience, working with the grid, working with the pivot tables, and all of those things. The Power BI Designer will be updated more frequently so we can be competitive. And the second thing is, it is going to be really integrated. And I hope I can show you that today, that all these things are integrated. You no longer have to go, oh, I want to rename my column. Let's open up the Power Pivot window, rename the column, and come back to my Power View to a dialog box that says, oh, you need to refresh your Power View report, click it, and then you're done. No, you can go in, rename it right here in the field list, and you're done. So we really want to be the completely integrated experience. OK, so with that, let's go in to demos. So let me switch over to the Power BI Designer. So what I have here is the Power BI Designer, which I downloaded. I already loaded in some data. What you get here is, for those of you who is familiar with Power Query, who's installed and played with it. OK, so that's what we see here. It's Power Query experience, including all the rich connectivity that it has to offer. And again, this is one of the things we're also adding every month we're adding new connectors to Power BI in both the Power Query and in the Power BI service. So what you can do here is, let me go to Get Data, click on More, and show you a big list of things that we support. So there's Excel, CSV, XML, text files, SQL Server database, Access, analysis services, a whole bunch of other databases. But the more interesting ones are when you actually start scrolling down. Azure, blob storage, table storage, web, OData feeds, Dynamics CRM, Google Analytics, SAP BW, Salesforce, and the other one that we just recently added is ODBC. So we have the ultimate escape hatch now, where, I mean, if you have an ODBC connection, just go ahead and add it here. There's actually an update for those who already tried it. That was V1. We already have an update for it in upcoming releases. When you connect to ODBC, you no longer have to just write your SQL query. We actually get the schema out of the ODBC connection and just allow you to pick tables. Those are the small incremental changes that we're adding every month. So there's no API here. OK. So another question is, how can I build my own connector? That is something that we are thinking about. That has not been publicized and has not been done yet. But the good thing is, all these others, like Google Analytics, Dynamics CRM, we have built using the infrastructure that would make it possible down the line for people to add their own connectors to the Power BI service. If you're interested in that a little bit more, there's a session later today by my colleagues Josh Kaplan and Łukasz on the Power BI for developers. Go there, and they will talk more about it. OK, so the thought is, and the idea is, in the Power BI Designer, you can import all your data. So the simple thing that I already did is I imported a bunch of tables from SQL Azure. So it's pretty straightforward. I have a bunch of tables here. But often, importing the data as is not enough. I want to extend it with other data. So what I have here is we have sales data. What I want to add to this is targets, sales targets data. So what I have is an Excel spreadsheet. And it's a pretty straightforward Excel spreadsheet that contains some data of sales targets by manufacturer for 2008 by month. This is a very common structure that you will usually see in organizations where they have the manufacturers or whatever it is on the rows, and they have the months on the columns. A very simple targets data. So I want to add that to this is not in my data warehouse, this is in some Excel spreadsheet. I want to add that to the Power BI Designer. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go back and say get from Excel. And again, in the upcoming release, we made some fixes to Excel as well. We have better schema inference, and also we've increased the performance quite a lot on importing from Excel. But in this case, it's a pretty small file, so I'm going to just point to it, double-click, and now automatically get, OK, this is the table that I want to do. I'm going to click on Edit. And now I'm going to be able to see it's already added here to my list of things. And this is the data, just as it was in my Excel spreadsheet. I didn't have to do a lot of things. It automatically recognized, well, here's the table of data. That's the one you want. So now I want to change some stuff around here so that I can actually start using it. So what I'm going to do is because this is not in a nice format that I can actually use it in my analytics. What I want to do is I want to unpivot these things. So Power Query has some great capabilities, and that's what it's strong at. The getting the data in and mash it and do with it whatever you want. Whether or not you have JSON files, or it comes from SQL Server, or it comes from a text file, Power Query is the place where you can create your queries, because what it actually does under the covers, and of course in Excel it's not as much of an issue, but what it actually does under the covers, when you're connected to a SQL Server database, all the transformations and the changes you make are actually pushed down to the underlying SQL Server database. So when data refreshes, it automatically pushes it, and the designer does not have to do all the heavy lifting. It's the SQL who's doing all the heavy lifting. Of course, for Excel, that's different. But all the same capabilities are there for both when you can push it down or when you want to do it in the designer. So what I want to do is I'm going to click on this guy, click on Transform, and you see there's a whole lot of transformational features. You can group, you can reverse the rows, transpose, replace values, so something is wrong in your data. Of course, that never happens, right? So there's something wrong in your data, so you can replace the values, pivot, unpivot, split columns, a lot of these things that you need in your normal day-to-day when the data is not that's nicely structured. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpivot all the other columns, and now I automatically unpivot the data. So I'm going to add month here, because I want this to be month. And I'm going to add my target value here. Okay, but I want to actually be able to combine this with my other data. My other data uses a date, an actual date column. So I'm going to add a column here that adds a date. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to make sure this is the right format. I'm going to put a whole number. I'm going to add a column. And now I can add a column here. It's called date. And I'm going to write some Power Query language that says date. And I'll zoom in a second because it's probably pretty small. All right. So this is going to do creating a date for 2008, because I only have 1 year, 2008, and the months it automatically takes from my rows, and I always want to do the first day of the month, so I can combine this data. Press OK. It's adding my date row here. I'm going to make sure it is actually going in as a date. And now all I need to do is, because now the data is here, I can go into my report and switch, and it actually already starts loading it to the model, so the data is being added. So for those of you who are already familiar with the existing Power BI Designer, on the top you'll see some new features showing up. We can start creating calculated columns in the Power BI Designer now. We can change the sort order, and I'll go into those in a minute. This is not the final place where they're actually going to show up when we actually release, but this is an intermediate step, an intermediate state that I can just show you today. All right. So I now have this data into the Power BI Designer. So let's go ahead and build some analytics. So you see all the tables are showing up on the right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in calendar year, and I'm going to make it into a slicer, because I just want to see 2008. I'm going to click the slicer, and we're going to drag in calendar month label. I'm going to make it bigger. And the first thing, of course, you see it's not sorted correctly, right? And even when I say sort by the calendar month label, it's going to sort it in the wrong order. It's going to sort it alphabetically. So I want to change this sort order. So what I'm going to do is just click on the calendar month label. And now this button lights up, sort by. I can say sorted by, and I can choose what I want. You see all the other columns from the table that are usable for me. And I say calendar month of year, and now it's automatically sorted correctly. So again, this is one of those things that in the past, when you're in Power View, you had to go open up the Power Pivot window, go in there, change the sort order there, come back, refresh the data. Now it's here automatically in place into the Power BI Designer. You don't have to go anywhere. You just do it. You immediately see the stuff happening. OK, great. So that's one feature that's coming next month, or actually this month. Now let's go add some sales amount. So I can do two things. First of all, I can just drag in sales amount. That will work, but that's boring. What I want to do, of course, is create a measure. I'm going to add a measure to my model. So what I'm going to do is to right mouse click, click new measure, or I can also click it on the top here. And what I'm going to do is, and you also see, for those of you who have seen the existing Power BI service, it now automatically highlights the measure name. So I can just start typing sum of sales amount. All right. So now I can start writing my first DAX calculation. And what it does is, and those of you who are familiar with Power Pivot, there have been quite significant changes made to the IntelliSense and all of those things. So what I'm going to do is start writing sum. And again, for those of you who are familiar with the existing Power BI Designer that shipped this month, we added the new feature already that automatically shows you the function help about the function that you're actually using. We don't have this today in existing shipping products. All right, so I'm going to do sum. I'm going to press tab. Another feature that we added is that you actually see the function prototype help. So you can actually see which are the columns that are being used. You see some help text around what the function is which we're actually doing. So it makes things a lot easier. The second thing, and that's probably the biggest change in my mind, when I started using the Power BI Designer, and I've been doing a lot of DAX for a long time in Power Pivot, I actually have to reprogram myself. Because the IntelliSense that we have in here is so much more smart that it's so much easier to use, but it's different. Because let's say I want to use the sales amount column. I want to sum the sales amount column. In the past, what I have to do is type in the name of the table, press tab, and now I get all the columns from that table automatically suggested. Well, now we can do something better. I can just start typing the column that I want, and it searches. So you see, it automatically found sales amount column in my online sales table. I just typed in 2 letters. That's it. That's all I need to do. So it's so much more faster than anything that I've seen before that I had to reprogram myself.
Is that matching on the SA and sales or the S and the A?
It's matching it's matching on, yeah, in this case it's matching on both. That's why you see everything from the online sales table showing up as well. But based on we're looking at all the data. So in this case we actually have 2 matches. You see this match, and that's why we think this one is the most probable that we want for you. And it's also pretty smart because it's not going to suggest any things that you cannot use. So that, again, is a big difference to what we had in Power Pivot. Power Pivot, we always suggested everything. Now we suggest based on what function you are using and how you're using it. We automatically suggest let's put it the other way. We won't suggest anything that doesn't work. So that's also going to make things easier. All right. So I'm just going to do tab. The other interesting thing that we did is, okay, look at this. So I forgot my last bracket, right? I didn't do anything. So I can press enter, and automatically adds it for me. So it's the simple things that we want to make different. All right. So the other interesting thing that we added, and that's a little bit of it might be a little bit a weird feature, but I love it. How many of you have had it that you're writing a DAX formula and you're stuck? It's complicated. You want to read Marco's blog. He's sitting right there to figure out what you actually want to do. But you always had to make your formula work because otherwise you cannot save it. You cannot do anything with it. But you want to go home first, right? What you now can do is, and let's just add something weird, press enter. And also the other thing that we added is, you see the squigglies, same as in Visual Studio. When something is wrong in your expression, we'll annotate where it is wrong and what is wrong. But you see, in the past, the function, the measure that I had here, you couldn't save. You were done. You had to make it work or copy it to a notepad file or email it to yourself. I've been there. Email it to yourself and you're done. But now, you see that here, and it just stays there. It doesn't go anywhere. You can just save the workbook, close it down, come back tomorrow morning, and continue working on it. And in my case, I actually want it to work. So I'm going to add it back. All right. All right, here we are. So now we see the sum of sales amount by calendar month label. And actually, yeah, this is the way I want it. So now I want to add my target values, the target values of the data we just imported. So let's go down to the target value and just drag it in. I'm going to add it to my value area as well. And you see already immediately something's wrong because it's giving me the same data all over and over and over. Well, usually that means there's no relationships. So we also changed how relationships work a bit, and we'll go into much more details later on. But for now, the thing that we can do is we can create a relationship here. We are also going to change the way that we detect relationships. We're going to improve that significantly, so we automatically detect more relationships. That's still a work in progress. So the only relationship type that we don't do right now is dates, and I'll tell you a little bit later on why we are doing that. So we have to create that manually. But you can go into the Manage Relationship dialog. So you see all these relationships were created for me under the covers. I didn't have to do anything. The only one that wasn't created is my date relationship. So I can go in here, select my target sales table, and I'm going to select my calendar table, and automatically recognize these are the two tables that I want. Press OK. I'm going to close it down, and now we'll see the data are starting to show up. And of course, I can use some of our new data visualizations, like combo charts, right here in the Power BI Designer. Some of the other things that we can do right here in the field list is I can hide fields. Like, I don't need these columns. Let me just hide this one. Let me hide it. Let me hide it. I don't need any of these. And actually, target value sounds like a weird name. Let me go in and rename it. So I'm going to do sales target. Press Enter. And the thing you can see, what happened is I changed it here. It automatically changed. But it also automatically changed it here in the visual. I didn't have to add it back and all that stuff. And also, it added it back to my Power Query script. So you see now I added a step in Power Query to rename the column again. So we made sure everything is consistent into a single experience. So, excuse me? Yeah, you can do. Yeah, we can do rename formulas. Yes. So yes, that's a very good point. So the other thing that we do is when you reference this in a measure, we automatically fix that up for you. You don't have to do anything about it. Yeah. We added so much stuff that I keep forgetting all the amazing stuff we added. All right. So let's continue. Now what I want to go do is I want to write, I want to see the sales. Let's go back up, drag it in. I'm going to add it by country. All right, sales by country. And now I want to see the sales from last year compared to the sales of this year. All right. So, of course, I need to go create a measure for it. So I can go in, right mouse click, new measure, and sales last year. All right, let's show you some more of the new DAX stuff that we added. Or actually not the new DAX stuff, but more the functionality. So I'm going to do if we actually have sales amount, I do the next line. And unfortunately, we have a very small bug. That's because of the build from yesterday, that the text keeps overlaying, but my multi-line, my next line, but I can fix that. If then we do calculate, and now you see it's kind of gone. But the thing we had is multi-line support. So I just did next line. I just started typing. I started tabbing. I can indent my text just like a proper editor. Calculate. I want to do sum of sales amount, and I'm going to do my same period last year. Oh, same period last year. And again, it's only going to add things that make sense. So I just type D, and actually already suggests to me the right column that I want, calendar date. All right, I'm going to close it off. I'm going to close this one off and press Enter. So you see we do support multi-lines now. We do indenting, we do tabbing. And the other thing that we added is, okay, so why did I do this if statement? Well, I did this because I want to test what is happening. And if you can see, we now can add comments as well inside of your DAX measures. And there are multiple ways to do this. You can do this one, so that's in the end of the line. But if you want, you can use the commonly thing used in code where you do the slash star and just inject comments in the middle of your expression, wherever you want it. So there's two ways of doing it. All right, so I added this, press Enter. And we'll fix the bug that I just showed you before we released to you. But now you see the sales for this year and the sales of last year. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So let's add some more things. So I'm going to, because the end result that I want to go do is actually create a dashboard. So what I'm going to do is going to drag in my sum of sales amount. I'm going to create a card index out of it. And the other thing you might notice now is that it's not nicely formatted. Well, okay, so I can click on sum of sales amount. I can go into my modeling tab. So we have a contextual menu item that automatically shows up when you click on a table. And this thing allows you to change, and this is just the beginning, these things you saw over here, the data category and the sort by column will move to that tab before we release. But you can start doing things like formatting here. So in this case, I want to add my 1,000 separators. And immediately, again, you see I changed the model, and I automatically started updating individuals as well. So that also works. So let's add a little bit more, some new data visualizations that we added to the product. Let's go in here. Let's make it into a gauge. So I can see this. So I want to add the last one and the last measure that I want to add, and that is sum of sales year-over-year growth, right? So sales year-over-year percentage. So again, I can start typing if sum of sales amount, and again, you see it only starts suggesting the things that are good, so it suggests me the other measures. Sum of sales amount, I'm going to divide my two columns. I'm going to divide the sum of sales amount minus the sales amount from last year by the sum of sales amount. And it's going to give me a percentage. Who here has seen the divide function and know why we want to use the divide function? Yeah. So there's two ways to divide values inside of Power Pivot. There's the divide function, and there's just using the slash, right? That's the normal one to use. We found that using the slash has some interesting side effects. Not necessarily bad side effects, but if you have a division by 0, which happens quite a lot, you need to wrap your expression around with if error. So if an error occurs inside of my expression, that do something. Otherwise, just continue where we're going. First of all, that's not very nice. It's not very nice to write, so the divide function automatically takes care of that for you. It's a safe divide by 0. And you can add an additional parameter that says, I want to return -0. By default, it returns blank. But having to wrap something around with if error has very negative side effects for the performance. Because what actually happens is we use a column store index inside of Power Pivot that actually allows you to access data in columns very, 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 very fast. But the problem is, if we divide one column by the other and an error happens, it needs to come up to another part of the engine and say, oh, an error happened. What do I need to do? And, oh, yeah, you need to do this. Okay, now you can continue, and it needs to go back down. And just there's a lot of things going between back and forward. And especially on very, very, very large data models. And when you have those types of things, this is the way to go. And I would definitely say, by default, just start getting used to using divide anyway, instead of doing divide using the operator. All right. So let's go in, press Enter. And again, I want to change this to be a percentage. Drag it in. And you can see our business is not doing very well. 19% year-over-year loss. All right. So that's one part. So let me add a new slide, a new page, where we can do a little bit more stuff. And the other thing you actually might notice now is that the formula bar on top actually stays there. So it's not going anywhere, it's staying there. And actually, I didn't talk about this, but let me go back to this one. You can have the formula bar stay there and actually move around your visuals and all that stuff. You see it actually overlays. See, it's going under it. What it actually means is we want you to be able to work with your measures, but it shouldn't take over your reporting canvas. The main purpose of the report is building reports. And probably that's most of the time spent. So we don't want to have this formula bar in the way of doing that. And it will only show up when you need it. So when you select a normal column, it's not there. If you select a measure, it's there. And the same thing goes for calculated columns. So it's going to be automatically there. All right. So what else do I want to do? All right. Let me add a few more things. Let me add the continent as a slicer. I'm going to choose North America. And I'm going to add 2008 again as a slicer. 2008. Okay, now let's add my state. And let's add sales amount year-over-year growth. Now I go in here and do a fill map. Again, one of the new visualizations that we added. So it automatically fills in the states and the regions with the data that we have. And another new visualization that we added, I just quickly wanted to show you those. I'm going to drag in color by sum of sales amount. And actually, this is my favorite. Go to tree map, and you automatically see the tree map showing up here. Again, because of the interactive nature of Power View, that also works. So if you click on black, you automatically see the other one. And there's not a lot of changes here, but it automatically cross-filters automatically with all the other charts as well. So all the new data visualization that we're adding have these interactive capabilities that Power View has. All right, so let's talk about more new DAX functions. So let's go back in here. This I'm going to skip. So we added a whole lot of new DAX functions. And actually, by the end of this month, in the next release, we'll add 25 more. We'll talk about that when we actually release more. But so we have new DAX functions, and a whole bunch of them. Things like date diff, which is a thing that I've been fighting for a long time. It's really easy. But probably the more important ones are things like percentile, concatenate X, median, geomean, product, XUR, XNPV. And those are the most of the, and we actually added a whole lot more, but those are more like for query, internal. It's not really interesting, but there's a lot of power under the covers. But these are the most important ones. So let's take a quick look at what they all do. So let's start with median. Of course, median we're all familiar with, but the median function returns the median of the numbers in a column. The interesting thing, of course, is, and we took most of these things, of course, from Office, from Excel, but we don't have cells to reference, we have columns to reference. So we also introduced the median X function. And in this case, it returns the median of an expression evaluated for each row in a table. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that actually means. So let's go back. Let's go in here. Let's drag in sum of sales amount by brand. All right. And now I want to see the median here. So what I can go in here and go write a new measure that says median. Median. And I'm going to write the median X, all selected, and I'll explain to you in a second what I'm actually doing here. And again, I type just BR and done, selecting the column. And now I type in, there's not much sales to choose from, but sum of sales amount, and that's it. So what I'm doing here is, I'm saying, give me the median of all the products, the brand columns in the product table. That's this table, right? The one on the bottom. And calculate the median of sum of sales amount. So what that actually will do, using all selected, it automatically shows you, it goes through every brand name in that table and gets the median value from all of those things together. I can go in, drag it in, and now you automatically see the median value. So you see the median value somewhere around here. The interesting thing here, of course, is that, of course, I wanted to show you this in the combo chart, but we have a small bug with that well, it's actually not a bug, but you see the scales are in the wrong order. So it actually looks like the median is way higher than the actual sum of sales amount. So I didn't want to show you that. But yeah, so it's pretty straightforward and easy to do median now in the Power BI Designer. So let's add another one that's probably more interesting and a lot of people love to start doing. It's percentile. So in this case, I want to return the kth percentile of values in a range where k is the value between 0 and 1, inclusive or exclusive. So again, let's take a quick look at what that means. So what I have here is a table where I have an age group. So when I have age group of customers, I'm going to actually go in here, make it into a slicer. There's some blank values here that I want to get out. So we have this age group, and I want to sort it by age group. But now I want to see the median of all the percentile to see where's the 90th percentile, where's the 50th percentile, where's the 25th percentile of my age group by sales. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get rid of count, and let's start writing the measure. In this case, I'm going to write my 90th percentile. And what I'm going to do is provide percentile X inclusive for my customer table, it's the one we use below, using sum of sales amount, and I want to see the 90th percentile, so type 09. So what this one is going to do is actually going to go through all rows in the customer table, calculating the sum of sales amount for that, and actually returning the customers that are in the 90th percentile based on the sum of sales amount. So I'm going to do is press enter, and I'm going to drag it in. Actually, I want to make this into a line chart. Oh. Picked the wrong one. All right, this is what I wanted. So you see the 90th percentile line. So we can do the same thing, and now once you get it, it's pretty straightforward to add more, because you just copy and paste. And I go to 50th percentile. I just change the last bit in 50, press enter, drag it in, and I see the 50th percentile line. And again, same thing for the 25th percentile, 25% percentile line. Just copy and paste, change the last bit. So percentile customer sum of sales amount 0.25, press enter, and drag it in. So it's pretty straightforward now. I don't know if anyone of you have tried to do percentile in the past using Power Pivot and DAX. It was a real nightmare. You had to read Marco's blog a few times before you actually, he has a trick on how to do it. You have to read it a few times before you can actually understand how to do it. Now it's pretty straightforward to actually add these. And of course, this is one of the most important, one of the things that a lot of the data analysis tools want to use. All right. Good. Yeah. So the last one that I want to show you, the new DAX function, is, I'm not going to, yeah, okay, we'll walk through these ones. So date diff, another function that I've been wanting for a long time is, okay, I just want to get the difference in days between these two dates. Today you have to do all kinds of Excel tricks to do this minus that times 365 times something, and then you always have to go read a blog post to actually figure it out. Now you just go use date diff. I want to see the days between this date and this date, and you're done. All right, next. This one is very much a financial feature. If you are in the finance industry, you need this function. If not, you've never heard of this before. Like that was the case for me. So XNPV function returns the net present value of a scheduled cash flow that is not necessarily periodic. So this is for a cash flow statement. I'm not going to go spend too much time on it. But the XNPV, we also introduced XUR, which is another one of those financial features. The finance people really love that we added these things. Yeah, we listened to them, we added them, but it's still pretty good. The last one, and this is one that is loved by a lot of people as well, is called Product X. This is one of those features that also allows you to do a whole lot of other things. Like Excel has 15 functions that are actually using this under the covers. So all those functions we can start doing as well. In this case, it returns the product of an expression evaluated for each row in the table. So let's say you want to calculate a future investment. And again, this is one of those functions that Excel has to calculate this future investment. It's FV values, calculating the future values. But what it does is, in this case, what I want to do is I want to calculate the sum of product based on the rates. So let's say I invest this much money as a principal, and I want to say, what happens when I have 5% over this amount of time? That's the future value of an investment that you can calculate. This is very much used in the stock market industry. We actually had some customers ask for it already in the Power BI Designer, which is interesting. So that's why I wrote this function, and that's why I have this example right now. So let's add this one. So let's go back to the Power BI Designer. First, what I want to have is a list of all the rates. And there's two ways that I can do it, but in this case, I just wrote in a small Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to import that data. So I'm going to do get data, Excel. It's called the rates table. Go in here, select the table name. You see a table of all the rates. I'm going to do edit because I want to change the name a bit. Rates. And that's it. So you see 1, 4, 2, 3, 5. Okay, done. Go back to report. It's loading the table in. That's done. So I'm now dragging in the rates, and I want to have this as a slicer. All right. I want to have this as a slicer. Of course, this is not, these are percentages, so what I'm going to do is click on this guy and change the format to be a percentage. Boom, there we go. And now I want to add this calculation. So what I actually am going to do, and of course this is not really what this function is being usually used for, but what I want to do is I want to add a promotion. I'm going to create a table out of it. And what I want to do is I want to show the sum of sales amount for this promotion, and I want to calculate the future value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, create a new measure. And that's called, the first thing that we need to do is we actually need to create the calculate. We need to calculate the rates. So what I'm going to do is go to rates calc, and I'm going to use product X. It's the new function we use. And what I want to do is I want to calculate for all the rates in the rates table that I've selected in my slicer. I just say the rates table, and I want to do 1 plus the rates column. That's it. So now it's going to productize. For all the rows inside that are selected inside of the slicer, it's going to take the product of that. And that's it. That's how I can do the rates calc. So let me add, now actually make it into an actual value. Again, new measure, and I'm going to calculate the future investment. Future investment, what I can do now is just sum of sales times the rates calc. That's it. Now I can drag it in. It actually shows me the values, and I can actually quickly set the 1000 separator. And I can change here now automatically. So you see I can change the slicer. The numbers automatically change. So we can use the product X to function that as well. Now, this is great. One other feature that we added to DAX, and we just blogged about this today, the first time that is actually there, but it is there. We also support variables inside of DAX. So what does that mean? Let's go in and actually rewrite the same measure, the same stuff we just did, but now rewriting using variables. So I'm going to create a new measure. I'm going to expand the formula bar because I need a little bit more space. And now we do future val as a variable. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually define the variable. So I'm going to write var, and I'm going to give it the name. The variable name is called rates calc. I'm going to do equals, and now I can write an expression. Variables can be reused in multiple different places inside of your expression, but variables do not just take a single value. I wrote a blog post on this today, so if you want to know more about variables, and Marco wrote a blog post on it today as well. If you want to read more about it, go to those blog posts, read all about variables, because there's lots of interesting details around what you can do. But in short, you can use a variable to store everything. You can use it to store a function or a result, a value of a function, like a measure, but you can even put tables in there. So you can have multiple tables and multiple variables. You can union them in the end. There's all kinds of possibilities that are possible using variables. And also, when you write more complex calculations, variables allow you to make it much more readable. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I could do sum of sales amount, and in this case, I'm going to write product X, my rates table. Again, we just saw this, so it's not rates. But now I want to go to the next line. I'm going to tab. I'm going to do var, create another variable, and it's called sales. And the var sales is just using my sum of sales amount. All right, great. So now I want to use these two variables together to return a result. So because you're going to say return, and what I want to do is I want to do if we actually have sales, and you see it now also shows up here in the IntelliSense. So you see the variable we just created showing up in the IntelliSense, so you can reuse it. Sales, then do sales times rates calc. Okay, great. So what we can do here is, and this actually does two things. First, it makes it more readable, but that's more of a personal opinion than anything else. But the other thing that it actually does is, if you were to write this calculation as it was just now, and in this case it's not as bad because we already do the best performance possible under the covers, but you can see we use the same sales function twice here. So you see, if we have sales, then do sales times revenue amount. But the value only gets stored once. So you put it in the variable called sales. We execute the sales calculation once. But now you return it, or you do something with it. We use it twice, but we don't actually execute the measure twice. We only execute it once. And this way you can get some performance gains if you have some really complicated measures where we couldn't figure out how to do it. So you will get significant performance gains if you are using this with more complicated measures. So variables allows you to start reusing values and splitting them up. All right, so that's variables. So and the last thing that I want to show you today is about our new relationship types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually look at my customers. I want to see the count of customers. Count of customers. Customers. And we do count rows. My customer table. Press enter. That's so far so good. That's not very interesting, but I do count of customers. But what I want to count it on, what I want to see is how many customers actually bought items of a particular product. And just drag it in and it just works. You might think, that's interesting, it just works, great. What we actually just did is a many-to-many. No one notices it, but it's there. In the past, you had to write all kinds of complicated DAX expressions to get this to work. Now it just works out of the box. So how does this work and how does this go? Great, yeah. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this actually means. Because it's deceivingly simple. It just works until it doesn't. And then you need to understand what's going on. Right? So let's take this schema. We have internet sales. We have a customer and a geography. The internet sales also has a product, a subcategory, and a category. This is a very common schema that we all see, right? Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So I drag in my English country region name, and I drag in sales amount. So far, so good, right? This is simple. But how, if you think about it, how do we actually get to these results? What did actually just happen? It just worked. We had combined data from two different tables. Well, in SQL, you have to write all kinds of things to make it happen. We just make it work. And because we have a smart semantic model under the covers to make this work. What just happened? So we apply a filter on the sales amount table. We sum all the sales amount columns and the rows that are left when the filter is applied. What does that mean? Let's go ahead and take a look here and here. So the first thing that actually happens is that based on the relationships one-to-many, we actually flow data from one table to the other. Again, what does that mean? So we just dragged in, we took the one cell for the region Canada, put it on the geography table, and now what will automatically happen is the geography table will be filtered down to contain only Canada. So instead of 655 rows, we'll have 73 rows. For those 73 rows of Canada, we'll push it down. Next. So now what we want to see is, okay, for which customers live in Canada. So we're going to push the filter down. So instead of my 18,000 customers that are all over the place, I only want to see the customers that are in Canada, right? So we flow down this relationship using the relationships that we have. So now we have only 1,571 rows of data. Now this continues, goes down the line. Now we look at the internet sales table. So what we're actually going to do now is show you, or actually use the amount of rows inside of the internet sales table where we have customers that are from the region Canada. And again, instead of 60,000 rows, I'm using 7,000 rows. And this is how we get to the result. So now we take the sales amount column for these 7,000 rows, sum them up, and give you the end result for this particular cell. This is the end of the line. This is where we stop. not filtered. We don't use those. There are end of the line. So country name is the only filter here. And again, this is how we get to the single result of Canada. So now we start asking the question, okay, in each country, how many customers bought bikes? So I drag in the count of customer key, in this case, and you see the same values repeated over and over and over again. For those of you who are familiar with Power Pivot, this usually means something's wrong with the relationships. Why? What's going on and why is this not happening? You see the number's not correct. Because we do the same thing. We apply the filters and count the remaining customers. But, let's skip this a bit. Again, we had this second filter of categories bikes, and it goes here, but it stops. It doesn't go this way. But what we want is the count of customers, which is in the other table. Customer isn't filtered by product category. This is the core of the problem. This is what we need to go fix. And today, to fix this in Excel and in Power Pivot, you have to write very complicated DAX measures to actually get this to work. Plus, it's not always as performant. But now, we have something called bidirectional cross-filtering. We don't call it many-to-many officially, because many-to-many means too many things to too many people. If you're a MOLAP developer, many-to-many means one thing. If you're a SQL developer, many-to-many means something else. And there's a whole bunch of other things as well. So we call it bidirectional cross-filtering. What happens is, if you go into the Power BI Designer, you go to Advanced Options, and you can see the cross-filtering option on the bottom. And it says, I want to have the cross-filter direction be both. And in that case means we're now bidirectionally cross-filtered. This is the default setting inside of the Power BI Designer. That's why it just worked when I showed you the demo just now. There's also another thing that we also ship, and it's kind of not really related to this, but it is now working. You can, besides doing one-to-many and many-to-one relationships, you can also do one-to-one relationships. We support that now as well. So you can go in here and set a one-to-one relationship if you want to. Okay, so cross-filtering direction is both. What does that mean? It actually means that, let's say we change the cross-filtering direction here, it actually means that the arrow now on this side here points in two directions. It doesn't filter in one way, it just filters in both ways. So in this case, what actually happens is, this filter now gets applied here as well. And now it starts working. I turn on bidirectional cross-filtering and it automatically starts working. Great. So you think this is great. And it is great. So what does it mean for the designer? It's automatically turned on, except for dates. We don't automatically turn it on for dates because you don't want your date table to be filtered. Because you want to do previous year, you want to do all kinds of things. If the filter directions start messing up that, then there's no way you can do any time intelligence. So we don't do it for dates. If you want, you can turn it on. The risk is yours. So by default, this is great. But once your model starts to become very, very complicated, you get into ambiguity. By the way, this might be what the next diagram view potentially looks like in a designer. I just took some screenshots of that. But what about ambiguity? Let's say you have a table like this, right? And a structure like this. You have a store, you have a region, you have a customer, and you have sales. So a sales, what do you want to do here? Let's say I want to say I have the store's name and I have the count of customers. How should we relate them? I don't know. So do you want the customers who live in the store's region? That's the top relationship part. Do you want that? Or do you want the customers who bought something at the store? Do you want this? Or do you want the customers who live in the region and bought something in this region? Both. That's a problem. We don't know. We don't know what you want, and we don't know how to solve this, except asking you a bunch of questions every time you try to do something in the report. We actually played around with this. It was a nightmare. It didn't work, and we decided to not go down that direction. So what we automatically do, and this is very similar when you have multiple relationships, what we do is we turn one inactive. And it's seemingly random, but it's not really. We try to determine the best way we can whether or not this is the relationship you want. But if we don't know, we just turn one inactive. And that means that we always pick one automatically. And you can go ahead and change it. I want the other one to be active. I want this one to be active. And of course, As always, DAX to the rescue, but more on that later. So you can filter this by store name. That's the one we automatically picked for you. So the relationship is inactive. All right. So again, very similar to what we do for relationships today, normal relationships. You can use inactive relationships as well in measures. You can do the same thing with DAX now for bidirectional cross-filtering. You can actually go a step further. So we have one DAX function called cross-filter that allows you to change the relationship, how it flows. So let's say I want to create a measure that does something differently than what my schema has defined. I can create the measure, say calculate my measure, cross-filter, use this foreign key and primary key, and turn on bidirectional cross-filtering, or turn off bidirectional cross-filtering, or do no bidirectional cross-filtering at all. So let's take a look at a few examples. Well, first one is simple. That says the count of customers, where I just do a count rows of customers. But now I want to say count of the customers using a region. I can do calculate count of rows. I'm going to say stop the cross-filtering for the other table, sales customer ID and customer ID, so that one. I want to stop you doing bidirectional cross-filtering, so set it to none. And then we do a use relationships. So we do use the other relationship, the one that was inactive. This is how you can get the count of customers using the region. So this was using the top part that we disabled. Or I can say I want to have both. So I can do calculate count of customers, so that automatically filters it down. But I want to only filter those in the remaining region. So what I can write here is calculate the count of customers, and this one is a little bit more complicated. Filter the customers that contains the items from the region table based on the relationship. So I'm, in fact, creating a relationship here under the covers. So the cross-filtering function allows you to do a bunch of these things that the schema doesn't support. You cannot have two things in the ambiguity action. So what you can do is use DAX measures to work around it and still get results of those things you want. All right. So at the final part, I want to publish this to Power BI. See how that works and when you have things in the designer. So I just want to recap for the designer where we are right now. So first of all, again, this ships every month. We're shipping more and more features, and we're going much further. There's even someone who leaked, it was Kamal, someone who leaked what the designer is going to look like going forward. If you go to Twitter, you can see some pictures. I was not allowed to show the same one here, but, well, someone's got to be the boss, right? But if you go to Twitter, you can actually see some picture of what it's going to look like. So the Power BI Designer is a free download. You get updates every month of the Power BI Designer, and it contains things like measures we just saw, we just added. We have calculated columns now that we just got added. We have better IntelliSense support. We have a bunch of new features. And one of the things that we want to go do, and it doesn't support it right now today, is, and you will see it in those screenshots that I was just talking about, we want to make it really, really, really simple to also publish this data to the Power BI service. So there will be a button right here that says Publish. You click on it, and it automatically publishes to the Power BI Designer. One other thing that I wanted to mention before I forget, today there's no way you can, when you upload your Power BI Designer file to the Power BI service, there's no way you can actually refresh the data, schedule data refresh. That is coming really, 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 really soon. So now you can actually refresh the data. So let's go and publish this thing right now. So right now what I have to go do is go to the Power BI service. And you see the new layout, the new style here. So what I can actually go in is go get data. And you see a bunch of the built-in data source. I click on the Power BI Designer file. I click on Connect. And I just upload my file. I already uploaded the file. I don't want you to have me watch 20 megabytes of things uploading over the network here. So what I want to do is, and again, this is one of the great features of the Power BI service. I already have a Sales Manager dashboard here that I actually imported from Salesforce. But next to this, I want to add my own sales data from the Power BI Designer file that I just created. I just want to have that on the same dashboard. So I already uploaded it. Let me go open up the report. And you will see it's the same report we just built with the same measure, same things. I'm going to click on this guy. I'm going to just pin it to the dashboard. It's really straightforward. Just click on this pin button, pin it, I'm going to click on this guy and pin it. And automatically says pin to the dashboard. I want to go to this guy, pin it. I want to add this as well, pin it. And I can go to all my reports, the ones that we just created, and I can pin them all to the visuals. I can go in here, pin this guy, go back to my Sales Manager dashboard, and now we see the same thing showing up here. And I can actually start changing it. So I want to have this one bigger here, and I want to have this one on the top. And you see data from two different places showing up in the single experience in a single dashboard. And that's usually what you want. You want to have, okay, you want to create a single dashboard where you see your HR data, where you see the sales data, and some of these things together into a single dashboard. But when you actually go in and actually show the dashboard and the user wants to know more, they can just go ahead and click on this, and it actually zooms into the report that we just created, where you can see more and more information and data about it. The other thing that is pretty cool here is because we created this into a single dashboard and all of these things, what I can go ahead is share this dashboard as well. Click on share, and now I can send it to my colleagues. I can just share this dashboard. They will get an email saying, hey, someone shared this great dashboard with you. What do you want to do with it? You can click it. It opens up in Power BI, and they can see the same dashboard. But it is your dashboard. It's my dashboard. So if I go ahead and rearrange some things on the tiles, the ones you've shared it with will see the rearranged tiles. They do not get a copy of the dashboard. They get your dashboard because you're the one who owns it, and you've shared it. So the question is, what happens when they don't have the designer? Well, we just uploaded to the Power BI service. They don't need the designer anymore. They just need a browser where they can actually see this data. So they don't need the designer. The designer is now pull the data out and put it into the service, and it all renders in HTML5 on this web browser. And actually, good segue into this. It also works against your mobile experience. So we released a bunch of mobile apps for iOS, and iPad. And actually today we also launched the Windows 8 and Windows 10 version of the Power BI mobile application. So you can go and install it from the Microsoft Store right now and get this, and then you get the same functionality, the same dashboards, the same reports will render on your Windows 8 in touch mode screen, as well as they do on an iPhone or an iPad. So once you publish it to the service, it becomes available on all these different, the Power BI service, you can think about it, is the consumption experience for this data.
Can it be modified in the cloud?
The reports can definitely be modified. Yeah, so I can.
Can you lock them?
Yes, you can. If I share it with you, you cannot change it. The only thing you can do is you can use Power View's interactive capabilities. So not necessarily change the report, but I can still click on this guy and automatically see the results change. That is the interactive capability of the Spot.
Cannot move the tiles.
No, they cannot move the tiles. They cannot change the report. We are working on more collaborative features as well, so you can actually collaborate with multiple people on the same report and the same dashboard, but that's coming later.
Are you going to have advanced features, hide tiles based on a user?
We'll see.
You can speak to the consumption licensing.
So the question is about consumption licensing. I cannot speak to that as much. Today we only have 2 flavors of Power BI that once it goes public, once it goes to GA, and there's free with a limit, and there's $10 a month. And there's nothing in between for now. That's the only thing that I can say. All right, so let me quickly finish this off because we're almost out of time, and then we can start doing some questions as well. So because I uploaded this to the Power BI service and I'm in this dashboard, we also get the capability of doing Q&A. So I can do total sales amount. And it's thinking a bit. All right, that's unfortunate. Total sales amount by product. Oh, it's not recognizing my... but in general, you should have been able to use the... No, there's something else. All right. So you should... Yeah, it's preview. But so you should have been able to catch up the... I think it's probably a little bit confused because I now have these 2 different models into the same dashboard. That shouldn't be the case, and I'll definitely go again and fix this up. But you should be able to use the Q&A on top of your Power BI Designer files as well. All right, so let me quickly go back to some slides. If you want to play around with the Power BI Designer and the Power BI dashboards, there are two amazing hands-on labs here. You can go to the hands-on labs area, play around with the Power BI Designer, get step-by-step instructions on how these things work. So if you want to play around with it, either go download it yourself and play with it. I would recommend all of you to do that as well. Oh, and the other thing that I forgot to mention is, in the Power BI Designer, if you have some feedback for us, if something was not working as you would expect it to work, or if something was working and you like it, go to the top hand corner here, and you see a smiley or a frown. You can click on these guys and say, send a smile, and they will automatically send feedback to us. And we will look at this every day. We get emails every day about this. When you have something that, I want to add this feature, I want to do this, this was not working. God forbid, you can have a crash or a bug. Click on this guy. We'll automatically get an email, and we can fix it. And we're going to fix it immediately. And there's someone who's going to reply to you from the product team as well about, thank you for your help, or what can we find out more, or can we help you? So please use this, because we use it a lot, and we find it very valuable to talk to people who use the products every day. All right. Let's go back. So hands-on labs, they're really powerful. And now I want to open it up for questions. So questions, yeah. Mark.
So once you have uploaded a report or a designer file in the context of a dashboard and you see it's the wrong dashboard, like I do every single time, how do you change the context of what you uploaded to connect it with a different dashboard instead?
So the question was about connecting and using that different dashboard. The only thing you can do is remove all the tiles and add them to the other dashboard.
Is that feature coming, or maybe you can drag it to say?
Maybe. I don't know.
We'll send a smile.
Yeah, send a smile, and also there's a user voice forum as well where you can ask for features. So Android, the question is about Android Power BI app. That's coming. It's not too far off. All right, more.
So I've been using Power BI and noticed there's no undo.
The question is about undo, and that is definitely coming. If you look at the screenshots of what is coming, you'll see an undo button there. There's actually people who already scoured the whole picture and saw an undo button, and they actually tweeted about it as well. All right, yeah. Color coding. Again, look at the picture and you'll see it. It's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
Real-time streaming.
Uh-huh.
Some of the sessions you mentioned about real-time streaming.
Yes.
Data, is that available?
It's available. Go to the same session I was talking to you earlier. There's going to be a session, an hour long, on interactive, about interactive and developer APIs. Yeah.
If I want to take one of those UI widgets and put it in like a custom website, is that possible?
Again, very good question. Can I embed certain pieces of the Power BI website? Not right now. That is also some feature that we're looking into. And it will probably use the same APIs that are going to be looking at in the session at 5 o'clock today. Yeah, so, yeah.
Am I going to be able to change the themes like in Power?
Ah.
Have different color palettes? I need different colors other than
So colors, yes, you're going to be able to.
And logos.
And yeah, well, we can do logos today.
But you have
But
to drag them from your Excel.
so there will be teaming support for Power BI, and especially in the designer. You can add those. Yeah, definitely. So the question is, can you publish to SharePoint? Not right now. Especially not the existing running SharePoint, because it uses an older version of the R engine and Power Pivot. So it doesn't understand the new model that we have in here and the new features that we have, and doesn't know how to render it. So the answer is today is no. The question is about the next version of SharePoint. That is TBD. Yeah. Yeah, so if you want, so the question was, can I just ship the Power BI Designer file back and forth? Yes, you can. So you can save it to a file share, anyone can open it from there. Yeah, that all works. No problem. I saw a question hand over there. No? Yeah, there. So are there data size limitations? No, there are no data size limitations on the Power BI Designer that I know of. I know some people have tried, was it 8 billion rows? 4 billion rows in a designer. They ran into some issues, but other than that, there's no official size limitation. I think if you get as soon as you get into size limits like that, there might be some issues. But officially, there's no size limit, and we should fix those issues as well. There is a size limitation. If you go look at the Power BI service, when you want to upload files to Power BI service, there is a size limitation to the free service. So if you want to use bigger files, huge files, you're probably going to end up in the paying SKU. But other than that, it should be supported. Yeah.
When querying a SharePoint list before, I run into limitations on lookup columns. I'm just wondering if you plan to expand.
So if you connect to SharePoint list and lookup columns,
Yeah, I've been told that the limit is 12. A lot of our lists.
I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I can follow up if you want. Yeah. I know there are people.
It's really limiting me even getting to the gate to be able to do some of the fun things, because right now our workaround is pushing it to a SQL Azure database and then querying the SQL Server. But ultimately, we'd like to
Yeah.
connect.
If you come up and give me your card later, then I can just I'll let you know. All right. Yeah. More questions?
Why does get data in the Power BI Designer produce different results than using get data in the web frameworks, like say connecting to CRM databases?
So I'm not quite sure what different results mean. You mean the same thing showing different numbers or showing different output?
Data model.
All right. So the idea is, and we actually want to add those, the question was, why does get data look different in the Power BI Designer than it is on the service? In our opinion, it's targeted two different audiences. One, the Power BI Designer is for the analyst who wants to combine the Salesforce data with the Google Analytics data and combine it into a single model. So if we give them out-of-the-box models, you're kind of prohibited of doing that. It's not very friendly. What we do want to go do is give you access to those models as well. So you can download the models, change them. We will give you the capability as well. But I think we'll probably give you an option in the Get Data experience that says, give me the model as well. But it's going to limit you in certain ways because you cannot query the data or structure the data in the way you want it. But we do want to give you capabilities to get to the model.
Do you have timing for that? Like the CRM data source is a mess. It's hard to...
Send a frown about that. That's the first thing that we want to do because it's actually owned by the CRM team. So if you give us the frown, we can give the feedback to the CRM team as well. I don't have a time frame for it. Yeah. Will it be shipped for on-premise as well? I mean, the Power BI Designer is already shipping on-prem. I'm not quite sure what the question is. Potentially. Potentially, yes. There's no yes or no for that yet, but it is potentially. Yeah. All right, sure.
You currently echo the data or copy the data over. Is there a plan to reach out?
So you currently copy over data, and there's definitely plans to look into scenarios like that. So you don't have to. There's no timelines for that. Thanks. Yeah. One more.
For fact data, I want to be able to show visibility for two different people, like two different sales guys with their data. Am I still going to run that through SSAS, or is there backup for you?
So today, the only way to do it is going through SSS. So if you want to use the row-level security features, that's right now only supported into analysis
I
services.
can still bring in all my peripheral dimensional slicing data in directly, but then just the fact data itself, I can run through SSAS.
And I would probably say you need to do everything through the same SSS model. Yes. All right. All right. Thank you very much. I'll be here. I'll be the rest of the day at the Microsoft booth. So.